The Supreme Court could destroy the internet next week. Thank God. It was a good experiment, but it's over now.
This case has the potential to end the internet as we know it. The internet flourishes on user-generated content. It's the backbone of the internet. And if you write or say something that is illegal, you can be held liable for what you said.
Yep.
But usually the websites that host your content are not liable. And when you hear about Section 230, this is usually what we're talking about. But if websites were also liable for what users say,
that is going to be a bad one.
Websites would either shut down almost everything or police things so tightly that there would be basically nothing even remotely objectionable.
Yeah.
Because if there's one thing that websites hate, it's being on the hook for billions and billions of dollars of potential liability and attorneys.
And this is why, again, I think that YouTube doesn't moderate their website very well. I think that they intentionally do not do it to not give evidence that they are a publisher rather than a platform.
And this isn't just some potential hypothetical. In the past, when laws made websites liable for user content, they just shut down the content and never came back.
Remember the Gawker whenever Hulk Hogan sued him? By the way, W's for that. Gawker was a piece of shit website. That's what they get. But that's what happened.
And one case before the Supreme Court this term seeks to do exactly that, but for all of the internet.
Hulkmania,
no joke.
yeah, that's
this
right.
This has the potential to end the internet as we know it today. So how did we get here?
Good.
How did I get here?
Well, it started with a tragedy. Noemi Gonzalez was a design major at California State University, Long Beach, who was spending a semester studying in Paris. On the evening of November 15th, 2015, she was dining with friends at a cafe on the Champs-Élysées when an ISIS terrorist with a gun opened fire. Gonzalez was killed along with 130 other people in coordinated attacks at 6 locations across the city. ISIS claimed responsibility for the attacks, and eventually 20 men were convicted of crimes related to the massacre. The lone surviving gunman was sentenced to life without parole.
Good.
So, was justice served? Well, the Gonzalez family contends that it was not because there was another perpetrator still at large.
Okay.
YouTube. The family sued Google, which owns YouTube, alleging that YouTube's algorithms amplify violent videos and hateful content, despite the company's efforts to ban violent accounts and limit their reach.
Does YouTube push that stuff? Yeah, I mean, I could see sometimes whenever they would do that. No, because, like, I agree that ultimately they're not responsible. I don't think that YouTube is responsible for this. But I do think that there should be some oversight. Because think about it like this. Can we all agree that negative and highly controversial content is more appealing? And it will generate more engagement and more interactions. Yes. So we can all agree on that. So then, if YouTube and Google is operating in its own best interest, it will promote and distribute ISIS content. That's the truth. So I'm not saying that YouTube and Google are doing that. But I'm saying that it is not as simple as just a what the fuck no.
The Gonzalez family says that YouTube...
And by the way, I don't even think this would matter because, like, you know why they're not doing this to TikTok? Because TikTok is in fucking China. That's the thing. So it doesn't make a difference.
Recommendations expose people to hateful content, radicalize viewers, and encourage them to make terrorist attacks of their own. Google argued that because ISIS, not YouTube, made and uploaded those videos, YouTube was not the provider or developer of those videos, and therefore it was immune from liability under 47 U.S.C. Section 230, otherwise known as Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act.
So I guess what it would all depend on is if they could prove that YouTube boosted those videos with the algorithm and then prove that because of that, YouTube was responsible. I guess. I don't know.
Section 230 of the CDA immunizes internet services for the content that its users upload and often allows websites to remove content without taking on liability. But the Gonzalez plaintiffs contend that YouTube's recommendations should not be covered by Section 230 because the company is acting like a content creator rather than a publisher. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals held that the Gonzalez claims fell...
I don't know. I don't really, like... Because, so, I think the user would also be operating as a content creator if you look at it in an abstract way, because the user is creating the data that the algorithm uses to feed them the recommended videos. So the website is processing the data, but the user is actually creating the data that is being processed. So both. Yeah, I think it's both, if anything.
Within Section 230, and Google was immune from suit. The Gonzalez parties appealed, and the Supreme Court granted cert to answer the question of whether Section 230 immunizes an interactive computer service from liability for recommending other party content. Now, in support of their claims, plaintiffs allege that, quote, 2 of the 12 ISIS terrorists who carried out the attacks used online social media platforms to post links to ISIS recruitment YouTube videos and, quote, jihadi YouTube videos.
I still don't think that means that they were radicalized by YouTube, though, because what this says is that they used the platforms to post the links. Posting the links would have implied that they already had them. So if you're using the argument that YouTube was radicalizing them, then how could they be radicalized if they were already being posted in the first place? It doesn't logically make sense. It's like the cart before the horse. They're already uploading the videos that are radical, so how did YouTube radicalize them if their usage of YouTube was uploading?
One of the men who fired at Gonzalez had appeared in an ISIS recruiting video in 2014. Now, the plaintiffs argue that the defendants violated the...
And I think also somebody makes another really good point here. I actually want to look at this. By that logic, not just the internet, but the entire media. Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Is that should Rolling Stone, for example, be held liable for future mass murders because they put that one kid from the Boston bombing on their front page? Here, I want to make sure you guys see this here. Just so you guys know what I'm talking about and you see what this is. So this was back in, like, I think it was like 2010 or something like that. So basically, this guy right here was the Boston bomber, and Rolling Stone put him on the front cover of their magazine. And a lot of people were upset about this. So it's like, if publishing or, promoting, and I think that, again, a recommendation of a video is not necessarily an approval of the video. Do you see what I'm saying? Because if you recommend something, that does not necessarily mean that you think that thing is good. It's you think that the person could be interested in that thing. So, for example, if you're recommending a video of the Black Plague, it doesn't mean that you are, you want the Black Plague to happen again. Does that make sense? So if you use the logic that a recommendation is a approval of it and a promotion of it, how is Rolling Stone not equally, and in my opinion, if not more, because the algorithm is automated? This is not. This was intentionally done by a human being. How are they not liable for future mass shootings? So yeah, I mean, I find this to be extremely interesting. I don't know, man.
Anti-Terrorism Act, the ATA, by allowing ISIS to post videos on YouTube.
Right.
Under Section 2333 of the ATA, as amended by the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, Americans who are injured by, quote, an act of international terrorism that is committed, planned, or authorized by a terrorist organization may sue any person who, quote, aids and abets by knowingly providing substantial assistance or who conspires with a person who committed such an act of international terrorism.
That is, bro, not even by the biggest stretch of the imagination is YouTube aiding and abetting by knowingly providing substantial assistance. Like, these are like 3 very big words. Knowingly, they had to do it intentionally. Providing, there had to be something actually given. And substantial, which is a qualifier. There is no fucking shot that YouTube did all 3 of those. There's no way they can get clarified or classified under that. No fucking way. Or conspires with the person. YouTube is not doing that. It'll never happen. The knowingly part would be their escape. Yeah. Rolling Stone had an article explaining their take on the bomber, making them not liable. I don't think that having your take on the bomber would really matter. Because what they're saying is that the recommendations are not contextualized. Yeah, I don't think it would matter.
Treble damages. So the legal question in the lower courts was whether a social media platform that was not used to commit a specific, quote, act of international terrorism may still be liable for aiding and abetting under
no
Section
way.
2333. The plaintiffs say that the answer is yes, that Google aided and abetted an act of international terrorism, conspired with the perpetrator of...
It's just such bullshit. I mean, like, at that point, are news stations liable whenever they show videos of ISIS or they talk about things like this? Absolutely fucking not. This is a ridiculous stretch. I do think that on the other side, there should be a level of accountability. Because, like, for example, TikTok has gotten a lot of shit for unintentionally having their algorithm promote self-harm videos. So I do think that there is a line for this, but I don't think that what we're seeing now is crossing that line.
Of an act of international terrorism and provided material support to ISIS by allowing ISIS to use
Reaching for the stars, this
YouTube.
lawsuit,
And of course,
yes,
the defendants say no. The plaintiffs'
bullshit.
claims are barred by Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which often immunizes interactive computer services, aka websites, even when they make targeted recommendations. The trial court and the
Wait a
Ninth
second,
Circuit
let me listen to that again.
by allowing ISIS to use YouTube. And of course, the defendants say no. The plaintiffs' claims are barred by Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which often immunizes interactive computer services, aka websites, even when they make targeted recommendations.
Oh, that's their defense. Oh, that's what they're saying. Okay.
The trial court and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals sided with Google, ruling that the claims fell within
Yeah,
Section
it's ridiculous.
230, Section C, because ISIS, not YouTube, created or developed the relevant...
I would also say that in the theoretical world where YouTube was promoting ISIS videos, like they had a keyword for ISIS that was created bespoke for that algorithm, then I think YouTube would 100% be liable. Like 100%, it's not even a question. But if this was something that was generated and there's no evidence whatsoever that it happened, YouTube was like promoting it intentionally, then no.
relevant content. The court said
But I
that
do
YouTube
think that opens up another question as to, how are you having this algorithm that you don't understand how it works and there's not enough oversight for it that it's promoting international terrorism? Because at a certain point, like you go so far down that road and it becomes not malpractice, but gross negligence.
quote, selects the particular content provided to a user based on that user's inputs. The display of recommended content results from algorithms that are merely, quote, tools meant to facilitate the communication and content of others and not content in and of themselves.
And tools that use content that is actually generated, the cookies and the different types of, like the different things that the algorithm uses, the like video recommendations, like what this person likes, that is actually created by the user, because the user is the one that is creating those recommendations. The algorithm just facilitates it.
As the lower courts noted, the recommendations are based on the user's preferences,
Right.
not YouTube's.
Yes.
The plaintiffs argue that Section 230C does not apply to, quote, activities that promote or recommend
I don't
content.
entirely agree with that, though, because on the YouTube homepage, if you open it up as just a random person, there are videos that are promoted by YouTube. Now, let's say these ISIS videos are not one of them. That is true, probably, at least I hope so. But there are videos that are explicitly promoted by YouTube.
So let's dig deeper into what all of this means. First of all, the plaintiffs are not simply arguing that platforms are liable because terrorists have used their services.
Yeah.
They argue that the powerful algorithms that recommend content are not covered by the CDA because the recommendations are content in and of themselves.
I disagree. Yeah, I think that's complete bullshit.
And as the Ninth Circuit said, the complaint alleges Google uses computer algorithms to match and suggest content to users based upon their viewing history. The Gonzalez plaintiffs allege that in this way, Google has recommended ISIS videos to users and enabled users to locate other videos and accounts related to ISIS, and that by doing so, Google assists ISIS in spreading its message. So
Google has recommended ISIS videos to users and enabled users to locate other videos and accounts related to ISIS. Well, Google did that anywhere. I mean, like, I think that recommended does not mean approved. Recommended just says, hey, this is a topic you're interested in. It doesn't mean that they are approving what is in the video.
Plaintiffs claim that YouTube facilitates communications between ISIS and people
Yeah,
who
it's
watch
another
their
video
videos,
that is
thereby
similar.
aiding ISIS in recruiting new members.
shouldn't happen anyway.
The plaintiffs
True.
acknowledge that YouTube removed ISIS videos and suspended or blocked ISIS users at various times.
Yeah, they do.
However, the plaintiffs claim that YouTube should have been able to stop ISIS from reestablishing accounts using new identities. And
That's so fucking stupid. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. And like anybody would know that if you allow people to make an account without an approval process, you're going to have, it's literally impossible. Yeah, like what do you, you can't do this.
the plaintiffs allege that Google left some of the ISIS videos up because they did not contain content violating the site's policies. At other times, Google removed the offending content, but did not suspend or ban the accounts. Now, we've talked about Section 230 of the CDA many times on this channel. Section 230 was created back in 1996 at the
Right, 1996. Totally another really great system for us to have, guys, for dominating the internet 20 years later. Or 25 years later. Really, really cool that we're still working off of a rule in 1996.
dawn of the internet. It has two key provisions. Section 230C1 says, quote, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider.
Okay.
This sentence is often called the 26 words that created the internet. This section stipulates that providing access to third-party content does not make an online provider the publisher or speaker of that content.
No.
Now, the second major part of the law is Section 230C2, the so-called Good Samaritan provision, which states, quote, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be held liable on account of any action voluntarily taken in good faith to restrict access to or availability of material that the provider or user considers to be obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable, whether or not such material is constitutionally protected.
Okay.
So this provision gives online platforms broad immunity from liability
whatever they want.
if they moderate content in good faith. This provision was meant to allow websites to police itself without incurring new liability because it was an issue of knowledge. A website might not know what speech was hosted on that particular website, in which case they wouldn't be liable for it. But if they knew that illegal speech or defamatory speech or some other kind of speech was hosted there and then took steps to remove it from the website itself, then they actively had knowledge of that particular speech and thus might become liable for hosting it in the future. So,
And do you see why these companies don't do anything? It's because if they do something, they acknowledge that it happened. It's like a very weird example of this is that what I said about the Starforge logo. If we change the logo, we acknowledge that the logo is a dick. You see? So you're stuck with it.
websites found themselves on the horns of a dilemma until Section 230 of the CDA was passed to allow them to engage in good faith moderation. Because there was generally a knowledge requirement to be liable for things that were hosted on your website. If you had no knowledge of what kind of speech was on your website or platform, then you generally weren't liable for it.
Yeah.
But the argument went that if you started to moderate your website, then that was evidence that you knew what was on there, and therefore you became liable for all the stuff that you were trying to remove from your website. This applied to
ridiculous.
spam, to pornography, to pirated media, to defamation, you name it. So the CDA was enacted in 1996 when the internet was still in its infancy. At the time, companies like America Online, CompuServe, and Prodigy were the portals that allowed people to access the internet. People could share files, exchange messages, and chat with each other in real time. But that posed a dilemma. Who would be liable if a user posted something defamatory or shared something else that was illegal? Would liability go beyond the person that was responsible for the post? Or would the internet companies who hosted the content also be on the hook? And that brings us to
I think that they could be on. I think it would be fair if they were on the hook if they published it and they promoted it. Like they knowingly promoted that thing specifically, but not otherwise.
the distinction between content publishers, distributors, and platforms, which is often completely misunderstood. In the pre-internet age, publishers, distributors, and platforms were treated differently under the law. Publishers were newspapers, magazines, and broadcast stations. They were generally liable for republishing material from third parties since they solicited the things that they published and they could vet those materials. Distributors
so it's like how are I don't understand how Google is supposed to be responsible for these ISIS videos, but these news companies that are talking about ISIS and publishing what they're doing and, showing videos of it constantly, how they're not also responsible. Because I can guarantee you there are people that watch, and it's just, I think mass shooters is an even better example. I think that a big reason why we have a lot of mass shooters is because every single time one of them pops off, then every single fucking place goes and they plaster his face everywhere. They talk about everything about him. They fucking read at a granular level his manifesto. They look back at all of his videos. Everybody knows his name. And yes, I absolutely think that causes more mass shooters. 100%. So how is this not being applied to these news stations that are talking about it whenever everybody here fucking agrees that it causes more of it? So and again, YouTube is not recommending and giving approval of these videos. They are just simply recommending them. So what that means is that by presenting the information in any form whatsoever, this means that you could potentially be held liable for it under what they're assuming. How are these other news companies not being held liable too? It doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Google responsible is like arresting a boutique owner for selling a newspaper that has a racist slur on page 15. Well, I mean, in America, that wouldn't happen anyway. But yeah, it's double standard. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
For businesses like bookstores, newsstands, and libraries, which distributed material that was printed by others. And distributors were not required to assess every book that they sold. For example, in the 1950s, the Supreme Court overturned a Los Angeles ordinance that said, if you have obscene material in your bookstore, you can be held criminally responsible. Yeah. And in that case, a bookstore owner was convicted of violating the ordinance by selling a novel called Sweeter Than Life, which tells the story of a, quote, ruthless lesbian businesswoman. The Supreme Court said that the bookstore couldn't be responsible for reviewing every single thing in the book or magazine that it sells. And distributors only had liability if someone notified them that something they carried was illegal. Yeah. That's sort of the origin of the knowledge requirement. And platforms were common carriers like phone companies.
No, okay, y'all might not know this. Like my dad told me about this because he's alive, like fucking 700 years ago, right? And so he was around in the 50s. Apparently, like a lot of the Confederate statues and shit that we have up now, that went up in the 50s. They didn't put that up before the Civil War or after the Civil War. That went up in the 50s. They put under God in the Constitution, or the Pledge of Allegiance in the 50s. Like, this isn't some kind of, like, fucking massive heritage thing. It was because of McCarthyism.
And television broadcasters. Platforms weren't liable for third-party content that they carried. So, for example, let's say AT&T found out that someone's answering machine had a libelous outgoing message. Mm-hmm. Was AT&T required to act by canceling the owner's telephone service?
That's ridiculous.
Well, the court said no. AT&T couldn't be sued for libel simply because the owner used its service to say something libelous. And similarly, a broadcaster wasn't liable for running a political candidate that falsely accused someone of being a communist. But then the internet came around, and the internet era posed a new challenge for this case law. Two of the first internet service providers, CompuServe and Prodigy, were sued for hosting forums where users posted defamatory content. Now, Prodigy billed itself as a family-friendly version of the internet.
Did you get a computer recently? Well, congratulations. You can now join hundreds of thousands who've discovered Prodigy.
It moderated comments, removing things it thought were bad. Now, CompuServe didn't moderate anything.
CompuServe combines the power of your computer with the
it's
convenience
lit.
of your telephone.
Yep.
And both of those companies were sued for defamatory statements that their users posted to the service. Now, the case against CompuServe was dismissed because the court considered it a distributor of content rather than a publisher.
Yeah.
CompuServe could only be held liable for defamation if it knew or had reason to know of the defamatory nature of the content. Yeah. And since they didn't do anything to moderate their forums, the company couldn't possibly know, or at least argued it couldn't possibly know, about what the denizens of Rumorville were posting about each other.
Which makes sense.
But Prodigy was found liable for failing to moderate enough. Someone went on a forum and claimed that Jordan Belfort's investment firm, Stratton Oakmont, committed fraud in connection with a stock IPO. The firm sued Prodigy and the anonymous poster for defamation.
Damn.
And a court held that Prodigy was liable as the publisher of the content created by its users, since it exercised editorial control over the messages on its bulletin board. Now, if the names Jordan Belfort and Stratton Oakmont ring a bell, that's because they were literally scamming people out of millions of dollars.
Then they sued them for calling them out. Oh my God. My man, there it is.
and have gone down as some of the biggest fraudsters in all of Wall Street history. The movie The Wolf of Wall Street is based on the fraud that they were perpetrating with respect to the IPOs. And it's one of the biggest ironies in all of First Amendment law that they won this lawsuit against the people that were hosting presumably accurate information about how they were scamming people out of money. That's part of the problem when websites are liable for user content, is that people can file lawsuits to stifle speech. That's what a slap lawsuit is all about. And because lawsuits are incredibly expensive, sometimes even if you scammed people out of money, as long as you file a lawsuit, you can stifle that kind of speech.
Oh, yeah.
But I digress. As a result of these cases,
the people that make the Bored Apes Yacht Club have started doing this. Remember how, Hassan and XQC and all of them got named in that lawsuit? Yeah, so that's a modern example of that. And that happened like last year.
Internet service providers basically either decided
Some other people
to
talk
not
to me about
moderate at all
too.
and leave absolutely everything up, or basically moderate everything and not allow anything to go up. And basically no one was happy with this state of affairs, so Congress enacted the Communications Decency Act. And then, as now, lawmakers claim to be especially worried about things like harassment and obscene material. So they gave online providers immunity from lawsuits if they moderated content. And again, the irony here is that this legislation came from the sort of family values type politicians, the people who always want to think about the children.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
They wanted to allow websites to remove violent and sexual conduct so that the internet could be even cleaner. The same politicians who wanted and got the little...
Oh, this was so big, man. Like, if you didn't grow up in like the 90s and the early 2000s, you really missed out. Because I can really tell, like, whenever somebody's like 25 or under, they probably don't remember the Satanic Panic. They don't remember how much censorship there was from like right-wing people to like stop anybody from talking about like, negative stuff about like the war in Afghanistan, talk about anything negative with like rap music or anything like this. Yeah, or even Pokemon cards. They were banned in my school because Pokemon was pocket monsters, and pocket monsters are from fucking Satan. So yeah, a lot of them don't remember that. They think that the only censorship they've ever seen is like left-wing censorship. Absolutely not, historically. That's just what we're dealing with more of now.
Parental advisory explicit content warnings put on rap albums. But I digress again. Section 230 was intended as a way for internet companies to create and enforce basic standards to run their websites. And when the CompuServe and Prodigy cases were decided, the courts only considered whether the ISPs were publishers or distributors. But an internet service, like a website, didn't fit neatly into those categories. A traditional publisher has total control over whether to publish content. A distributor can control what it buys, but it wouldn't have been practical for a human to fully screen every item. Modern social media companies host more material than any library or book.
I don't understand how somebody making an account would not be considered editorial control, because the accounts are created by the website, and if you don't have an account, you don't have editorial control. So how is the website not granting editorial control to the individual by allowing them to make an account and post on the website? I don't get that. That doesn't make sense to me.
Store on Earth, which makes screening all of that info daunting, if not impossible. And without Section 230, social media companies would be subject to strict liability for every message and post made on their services. So Congress chose to give those platforms and websites immunity as an incentive to get them to remove offending speech. Congress also chose not to dictate to those companies which speech they had to remove. So that brings us back to the original question in this case. How should courts read Section 230? The lower courts follow the test set forth in the Ninth Circuit case called Barnes versus Yahoo, and the Barnes test hews close to the text of Section 230. The law specifies that only 1, no interactive computer service, shall be 2, treated as a publisher or speaker, of 3, content provided by another information content provider, aka users. Now, the plaintiffs argue their claims do not treat Google as a publisher, but instead assert a simple duty not to support terrorists.
Bro, like, are they trying to do, like, some moral majority fucking bullshit argument? Oh, my God. Their duty to not support... Oh, get the fuck out of here. Come at CNN and Fox News and MSNBC with this first, and then maybe I'll take it seriously. because they promote more terrorist stuff than anybody else, not to mention mass shooters and everything else in between.
It prohibits Walmart from
fuck outta
supplying
here.
fertilizer, knives, or other material to ISIS. And in the same way, the ATA bars Google from giving ISIS a platform to communicate.
They maintain it just as ATA prohibits a retailer like Walmart from supplying fertilizer, knives, and food to ISIS. Knowingly. Like, this applies, like, Walmart. I'm sure that Walmart has, I'm sure somebody from ISIS has bought something from Walmart before. Guaranteed, somebody that is aligned with ISIS has purchased something from Walmart. Like, what are we talking about? This is such a ridiculous thing to say. Is this serious? Yeah. No, like, they have to eat. Yeah. If somebody from ISIS goes into Walmart and they buy something with cash and then they walk out of it, then yes, Walmart just sold them something. This means that they're not doing business with ISIS as an entity. Yes, of course. But it doesn't mean that individuals, and again, it's individuals uploading onto YouTube. It's the same thing. Do you see what I'm saying? How would Walmart know they're ISIS? It's so dumb. Bought from Lockheed Martin, which is and was more devastating. Well, I don't know. I'm just talking about Walmart right now. Imagine Walmart requiring ID to enter. Yeah, like, that's the world that you're going to live in if you keep going down this road.
Okay. The Ninth Circuit found this analogy specious. The idea of a duty not to support terrorists, quote, overlooks that publication itself is the form of support Google allegedly provides.
Overlooks the post itself as a form of support. Get the fuck out. This is so ridiculous. I never actually read anything about. I'm so glad I'm watching this video because I thought this was a lot more substantial and a lot more serious. This is complete bullshit. What do you mean? Like, the publication itself is a form of support? Okay, then apply that to every fucking newspaper. Apply that to every fucking news station. Apply that to anybody talking about it. This is so stupid.
And publication of third-party content is what Section 230 gives to internet services.
Yeah.
According to lower courts, publishing encompasses, quote, any activity that can be boiled down to deciding whether to exclude material that third parties seek to post online.
Any activity that can be boiled down to deciding whether to exclude material. So then, so if YouTube did not decide to exclude the videos of ISIS, basically what they're saying is that YouTube would have had to have made a decision. They are saying YouTube was given the videos of ISIS and they actively did not remove them.
Google says that the CDA uses the words publisher or speaker in an ordinary sense. Quote, based on an ordinary meaning, a publisher or speaker is one that publishes or speaks. Google contends that when YouTube's algorithms make recommendations, this activity is protected by Section 230. Quote, Congress underscored that publishing for purposes of Section 230 includes sorting content via algorithms by defining interactive computer service to include tools that pick, choose, filter, search, subset, organize, or reorganize content. Congress intended...
What are we talking about then, if they've already been through this?
To provide protection for these functions, not for simply hosting third-party content. And the plaintiffs disagree. Their interpretation of the Section 230C defense is that it requires a narrower interpretation of the word publisher. The Ninth Circuit previously held that Section 230C1 uses publisher in its everyday sense, and the Second Circuit agreed. But the plaintiffs contend that
the argument only works if we redefine the word? I mean, I think that's a pretty bad fucking argument. Like, well, yeah, but, you know, if you redefine the word, we're right.
Publisher is used in Section 230C1 with a narrower and distinct meaning, which that term has in defamation law. Basically, the plaintiffs are claiming that any time YouTube recommends another video, it therefore becomes the speaker of that video, as if YouTube had produced that video itself. Now, defendants say that this interpretation doesn't make sense. Quote, watch the World Series of Poker on YouTube, and YouTube's algorithms might display Texas Hold'em tutorials.
And also, like, again, I think that this immediately falls flat whenever you realize that the only person who's actually creating the data that's being used for the algorithm is the user themselves. It's not even Google. Google isn't creating the data. They are aggregating the data. So if you're talking about the creation of the data that the algorithm uses, that's done by the user. It's
That does
just
not mean
so
that YouTube
dumb.
endorses gambling any more than spellcheck endorses a suggested substitute word. Westlaw endorses higher
so
listed
mad.
cases, or a chat room endorses posts organized by topic. As the Ninth Circuit noted, YouTube applies the same algorithms to all content. And it's here that I think people often misunderstand the nature of the internet and the nature of social media. With the case of YouTube, people upload millions of videos a day. If there wasn't an algorithm to sort through this deluge of videos, the only way to sort through them would be a fire hose of viewing every video chronologically, which nobody
It'd be
wants.
impossible.
It would be that or doing a pointed search to try and find content. But then you'd never be exposed to content that you actually do want to watch but didn't know that you wanted to seek it out. And the plaintiffs have tried to differentiate between search results and other algorithmically generated results. But there's really no principled way to distinguish between results that are sorted when you actively search for something versus results that are presented to you because of a recommendation algorithm.
I do think that I don't know if I completely agree with that, because I think that if YouTube, have you guys ever like opened up YouTube on like a new browser without an account and you see a video that's promoted of like Jimmy Fallon or something like that? You guys ever had that happen? Yes, these are videos that are created, that they are boosted by YouTube. So I think that if YouTube is the one doing the boosting of the video, they should be responsible for what the video has in it. Abso-fucking-lutely. It's not even a question in my mind. But if YouTube is not actively boosting a video, knowingly boosting that video specifically, then no, they should not be responsible for it. Though I think there's a very clear distinction there.
And people love to hate algorithms, myself included. But the truth is, if there weren't algorithms to help us sort through all of the content on social media platforms,
I might not have seen
it would
this
be
video.
impossible to wade through it.
Exactly.
And then additionally, there's the issue of the material support related for a claim under the Anti-Terrorism Act.
What is
now,
this?
the Department of Justice's brief in support of the plaintiffs argues that algorithmic recommendations convey the website's own implicit message that users will find the information relevant, and that makes the website liable because it's acting just like ISIS itself. Now, plaintiffs didn't. Now, the Department of Justice's brief in support of the plaintiffs argues that algorithmic recommendations convey the website's own implicit message that users.
It conveys the website's own implicit message? No, because the algorithm is created in part by the user. That is ridiculous. The algorithm uses the user's data. It is explicit.
Users will find the information relevant,
what-
and that makes the website liable because it's acting just like ISIS itself.
No, that's
plaintiffs-
so fucking stupid. That is the dumbest. I'm so fucking sick of people at the government that don't know how to use their fucking email that are doing this. This drives me crazy.
Didn't claim this in their original complaint. Instead, they focused on how YouTube's recommendations amplified the ISIS speech, making it more visible to more users. But the U.S. government...
Aggregating the data is creating the data? Sure, okay. So if you want to use that argument, then is the user responsible for promoting ISIS because they've also created the data that they in part used with the algorithm? So any person that ever gets recommended a YouTube video of ISIS, does that mean that they're also liable for that? If you see, that's it's the dumbest fucking thing. Like, think about it for 3 seconds.
Urge the Supreme Court to adopt a narrow reading of Section
so mad.
230 that would permit a finding that Google
mad on the
materially
internet.
contributed to the content by matching it to user preferences. Again, basically, the Department of Justice, as well as the plaintiffs, are arguing for a standard that if any website promotes content, uses an algorithm, or recommends content to users, that website then becomes liable for all of the speech contained within that recommendation.
And that is...
What?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think that if a video, so if let's say YouTube uploads a video or YouTube artificially promotes a video and that video is showing something that's bad in one way or another, whether it's copyrighted, whether it's ISIS, whether it's anything, and YouTube intentionally promoted that video, I do think they should be liable for that. Because they did intentionally publish that video specifically. But it's a case-by-case basis. It's not even like... This is something you would use in like... This is like a 0.1% of situations thing.
Happens when websites are liable? Well, remember I mentioned that this has actually happened before? Well, it has. In 2018, then President Trump signed into law 2 bills making it easier to fight sex trafficking online. That was the Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act and the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act, otherwise known as FOSTA and SESTA. And those 2 laws created an exception to Section 230's safe harbor rule by stating that websites could be held legally responsible if third parties posted ads for prostitution on their platforms. The law penalizes websites which, quote, promote or facilitate prostitution. Okay. And while this includes sites that promote illegal sex work, it also allows the police to investigate any site.
I wonder what that really means. Because, like, how do you have OnlyFans and Twitter and Instagram that are promoting OnlyFans and Fansly? How do you have these if you had this rule? There's obviously something I'm missing here that I don't understand.
That is knowingly assisting, facilitating, or supporting sex trafficking. This language can be read to include sites with
illegal, so it's only with illegal. Okay.
Content that is legal, such as escort services, personal ads, and pornography. Now, critics of FOSTA and SESTA warned that the new laws were too broad and they would end up killing internet content that has nothing to do with sex trafficking. And they turned out to be correct.
Okay.
If a third party posts content that is covered by FOSTA or SESTA, and the website fails to prevent that content from being posted, that website can be sued. And that was simply too much legal risk for several websites.
You should have gone for the head.
Craigslist shut down its entire personal section.
Wow.
Tumblr banned all adult content, and Reddit removed several subreddits, and other websites just simply shut down entirely. So you might ask, did any of this assist with the prosecution of sex trafficking? Well, in 2021, the U.S. Government Accountability Office released a report on the first 3 years of FOSTA and SESTA, finding that, quote, over 3 years, the Department of Justice filed just 1 case under its rules against promoting or recklessly disregarding sex trafficking. So ironically, this provided essentially the perfect natural experiment to find out what happens when websites are liable for the speech content of its users. One of 2 things will happen.
Yeah, they'll just remove the entire section.
Either the website shuts down that section or shuts down the entire department, or the website employs an army of moderators to remove anything even remotely offensive.
I will say that I've seen some videos about the vagueness is intended. Yeah, you could be right about that. I've seen some videos about how, like, you know, underage girls are, like, doing stuff on, like, TikTok Live. I do think TikTok should be responsible for that. I do think so, because it just happens so much, and it's like, if this is such a massive problem and TikTok is used by such a large percentage of an underage audience, how do you have a going live feature that's not being curated? And the thing is, like, every cam website has fixed this problem, because all the different camming websites, you have to post a picture. Like, I don't know about what it is now, but I know for some of them, you used to have to post a picture of yourself holding your government ID next to your face, and then post, like, your government ID. You had to do a bunch of fucking age verification, ID verification, everything. This is for, like, Live Jasmine and, like, these other cam websites. So they've already solved this problem. So if TikTok has this massive underage audience of people, then I think TikTok should have to apply something like that as well. Because I guarantee you, if Live Jasmine was having this problem, then they would be done. How do you know? I forgot how I know, actually. I don't remember how I learned that. It's probably somewhere on 4chan.
Basically, either live in a world where a website allows everything, scams, spam, pornography, ultra-violence, just everything that you can possibly imagine you probably don't want to see in your everyday life. Or you live in a world where they employ extremely expensive moderators who prevent anything that might possibly be offensive. And that, of course, assumes that a website can even afford to employ those moderators.
Yeah.
So there are those who want to see Section 230 modified or scrapped altogether, and have argued that these online services are acting like content developers. Now, oral argument in front of the Supreme Court is next week, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is on this one. I filed a brief in the Supreme Court along with Dr. Mike, Mythical Entertainment, Chubby Emu, Tim Schmoyer, and the Authors Alliance, and a bunch of other creators. We filed an amicus brief explaining the potential dire consequences of a really bad ruling on this, so we'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, I'll probably just be stress eating at the end of the internet. Unless I use today's sponsor, Factor 75. Because Factor...
I also think that, I think that you might also just see more websites that people use for social media that exist overseas that are harder to prosecute, like TikTok. Like, I think that also might be a way that things go if they end up passing this law.
Makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. And the meals are completely ready to eat.
Is that a $2 steak?
Their team of gourmet chefs creates each meal using ingredients with integrity to help you feel your best all day long. And I can tell you from experience,
what was that one?
Each meal using ingredients with integrity to help you feel your best.
Bro, I thought that was a chicken fried steak. I was like, oh, with some cream gravy on it. That's a keto mushroom, but what is that?
All day long. And I can tell you from experience, they really are extremely delicious. Factor supports wholesome eating made simple. Their menus are updated weekly with 34 different options. Choose your favorite meals or let Factor craft the order based on your taste preferences and meal history. Factor takes the guesswork out of grocery shopping and meal prep, saving you time and energy for other things. Their no-hassle prepared foods make sure you always have something nutritious on hand when you don't have time to think about making a meal. And sometimes I just want a good, healthy meal without having to cook, or obviously...
That's why I go to Chipotle. And I haven't gotten a coli yet. I'm sure it will be coming soon.
Shop for the ingredients. And Factor's meals arrive pre-prepared and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. And I can always scale up my meals if I need the extra energy after a long day of lawyering. So give Factor a try by heading to factor75.com and use the code LegalEagle50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Or just click on the link that's on screen right now or down in the description and use the code LegalEagle50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. And clicking on that link really helps out this channel. And after that, click on this box over here for more Legal Eagle, or I'll see you in court.
That was a really good video, man. Holy shit, that was a good video.
This case has the potential to...
Wow. That was great. I actually learned a lot out of that. I'm going to link it to you guys. Make sure to give it a like. Give him some support, man. This is so good. He's got a good channel. Yeah, I've watched a number of his videos before. I remember, like, during the whole, like, Amber Heard thing, I watched a couple of his videos, and then I think after that, there was something else that I saw of his, too. Yeah, Legal Eagle, amazing W channel. Make sure to subscribe and give it a like, man. It is amazing. I'll link it for you guys again. The chest butt, yeah, the chest butt plug, yeah. I think that might have been the other one too. We may not think they have this case, but you have to remember the Supreme Court justices are all 60 to 80 years old, and none of them understand the internet. Well, nowadays they're not all 60 to 80 years old because a few of them got removed in the last 5 years. Didn't Trump appoint like 3 new justices or something? I think it was 3. I know it was 2. Was it 2? Oh, fuck. Okay, yeah, I guess it was 2. Never mind. Because the old one died? Yeah, exactly. Aren't all them 62? I think they're like 50s. I don't know, but like they are old. I am, as I said, Biden got the 3rd one? Oh, yeah. Okay, now I remember. Okay, I thought it was, fuck. I'm trying to think of the 3rd person's name, but maybe that, I don't know. It was a long time ago. Anyway, I could go on about this forever. It doesn't really matter. You guys are probably right. Anyway, I think that this case is completely fucking bullshit. This is total fucking bullshit. Whenever I originally heard about this, I thought it was going to be much more substantial. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And anytime that you look into and start discussing this, I'd be curious to hear somebody else's argument for it, but seems like bullshit to me. That's what I think. It's really bad, yeah. They can't fully they fully understand what they're doing. The purpose is to cripple social media so they can force their agendas on these companies. That's not... Next. Okay, let's read a few more. The case itself isn't strong, but there's a huge ramifications because the precedents the Supreme Court can introduce if they mess up the wording. That is true, too. Yeah, you're right about that. The problem is that they ban some things and not others, so they act like the publisher when it suits them. Well, that was already... But that's not a problem because it was already stated, like, right here. Look at this. Look what they said. The provider or user considers to be lewd whether or not such material is questionably constitutionally protected. So that's actually not true. And again, if you go and you read it and you watch it, that's what it says. In good faith. Yeah, exactly. They're moderating in good faith. You're arguing that a partisan court isn't doing things that are in their own self-interest? The Supreme Court didn't start this lawsuit. Another person did. The Supreme Court isn't suing Google. These other people are suing Google. Yeah, but they're not moderating in good faith, though. I will tell you this. I think social media needs government regulation. I absolutely think so. I think it is ridiculous that a 15-year-old can make an account on social media. That should not happen. I also think that it is ridiculous that people are getting their accounts removed. These algorithms that are intentionally opaque and hard to understand can potentially cause an impact in an election. That's massive. Like, I think one of the biggest reasons why Trump won in 2016 is because of social media. I think you've seen how powerful social media is with 2020 and the election stuff. You saw how strong it was with COVID. The fact that they have no fucking oversight with this is insane. They absolutely need oversight. It's not even a question. Copyright law should be revised as well. Yeah, well, one thing at a time. Yeah, it's bordering on authoritarianism, allowing the government to control a free speech platform. It's not a free speech platform. It's clearly not. Like, let's not pretend like it is. Yeah, you're contradicting yourself now? Days, how am I contradicting myself? Actually, never mind, you're just banned. I don't want to hear it. Yeah, your misunderstanding or lack of understanding is not my fault. Yeah, we're not going to listen to it. It's not contradictory at all. I love how people start getting, like regulation is like a trigger word for certain conservatives. So like the moment that they hear regulation, they think, oh my God, bad, 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 bad. Meanwhile, while they're typing on a keyboard that's regulated, onto a computer that's regulated, with an electricity source that's regulated, on an internet that's regulated, by a company that does the internet that's also regulated. And they're looking at it on a monitor that is extremely regulated. But somehow, if you regulate the social media websites, that's too much over the line. Get the fuck out of here. It's so ridiculous. Makes me so mad. They're brainless. Yes, it's so stupid. Anyway, yes, again, I'll link this video again. I love this video. I will link it again.